But if everything is against you, if the world seems hostile, if your fragilities are exposed, have you ever wondered if all this could actually be your greatest strength? In a world that often celebrates toughness and resistance, vulnerability is seen as a weakness to be hidden, and akilskidel to be protected at all costs. But what if instead you decided to embrace it? What if you recognized that in reality your vulnerability is the source of an authentic and unparalleled strength? But what is vulnerability? Vulnerability is that part of us that expresses our deepest emotions, our fears, our uncertainties. It is the ability to say, I am not perfect. I have limitations. I have weaknesses. But it is also much more. It is the door through which love, connection, and creativity pass. Vulnerability is what makes us human, what allows us to connect authentically with others and with ourselves. Often, however, we tend to hide it. Society teaches us that we must be strong and vulnerable, always ready to resist the shocks of life. This belief leads us to build walls around our hearts, to implement defense strategies that isolate us, that prevent us from living fully. But what would happen if we allowed ourselves to break down these walls? What would happen if we decided to show our true face without fear of being judged? The answer is surprising. We would discover a new, authentic force, capable of transforming our lives. Vulnerability is powerful because it is real. When we show ourselves vulnerable, we show ourselves authentically. We are not wearing masks. We are not acting out. We are ourselves in our entirety. This authenticity makes us strong because we no longer have to spend energy hiding who we really are. Vulnerability also opens the door to connection. When we show ourselves vulnerable, we allow others to see who we really are, and this creates a deep and sincere connection. Relationships that are based on vulnerability are strong relationships because they are built on a foundation of trust and mutual understanding. Vulnerability plays a central role in personal growth. Accepting your vulnerability means accepting that you are constantly evolving, that you are not perfect, that you always have something to learn. This attitude of openness and humility allows us to grow, improve, and develop new skills. When we accept our vulnerability, we also accept the risk of failure, of being hurt, of being disappointed. But it is precisely in this risk that our growth lies. Every time we expose ourselves, that we put ourselves on the line, that we try something new, we are growing. We are developing our resilience, our ability to face life's challenges. Vulnerability and resilience, a powerful combination. Vulnerability and resilience are two sides of the same coin. Being vulnerable does not mean being fragile, but rather being able to get up after a fall, to find strength in one's weaknesses. Resilience is the ability to adapt, to transform difficulties into opportunities. And this ability comes precisely from accepting one's own vulnerability. When we accept our vulnerability, we develop an inner strength that allows us to face any difficulty. We know that we can fall, but we also know that we can get up again. And every time we get up, we become stronger, wiser, more capable of facing future challenges. But how do you embrace your vulnerability? How do you move from seeing vulnerability as a weakness to recognize it as a strength? Here are some steps you can take to get started on this journey. 1. Do you recognize your emotions? The first step to embracing vulnerability is acknowledging your emotions. Often, when we feel vulnerable, we tend to repress or ignore what we feel. Instead, try to acknowledge and accept your emotions without judging them. Whether you feel sad, scared, anxious, or uncertain, these emotions are a natural part of life and deserve to be heard. 2. Share your emotions with others. One of the most powerful ways to embrace vulnerability is to share your emotions with others. This doesn't mean you have to tell everyone every detail of your life, but rather find one or two people you trust and can be authentic with. When you share your emotions with others, you create deep and meaningful connections. 3. Be kind to yourself. Embracing vulnerability requires kindness and self-compassion. When you feel vulnerable, avoid judging or criticizing yourself. Instead, treat yourself with the kindness you would a close friend. Remember that vulnerability is a natural part of the human experience. 4. Do you accept uncertainty? Vulnerability often comes with a sense of uncertainty. Accepting uncertainty is a key step in embracing vulnerability. We can't control everything in life, and accepting this fact allows us to live with greater serenity and openness. 5. Do you recognize courage in vulnerability? Being vulnerable takes great courage. Every time you show yourself vulnerable, that you open up to others, that you face a difficult situation, you are demonstrating enormous courage. Recognize this courage and celebrate it. To better understand the power of vulnerability, it is helpful to look at the stories of people who have embraced their vulnerability and drawn strength from it. Think, for example, of Nelson Mandela, who endured years of imprisonment without losing his humanity, or Malala Yousafzai, who transformed her experience of vulnerability into a force for global change. These people didn't hide their vulnerability, they embraced it, turning it into a source of inspiration for millions. Their strength didn't come from being invulnerable, but from accepting their weaknesses and using them as tools for change and growth. Vulnerability is also fundamental in interpersonal relationships. An authentic and deep relationship cannot exist without vulnerability. When we show ourselves vulnerable with the other, we create a bond based on trust and mutual understanding. Being vulnerable in relationships means being open, honest, and willing to share your fears and insecurities. It also means being willing to risk being hurt, knowing that this risk is necessary to build authentic connection. Finally, vulnerability is a powerful tool for spiritual growth. When we embrace our vulnerability, we open ourselves to a deeper dimension of our existence. We recognize that we are not perfect, that we have limitations, and that we are constantly becoming. This awareness allows us to grow spiritually, connect with our deepest essence, and live more authentically and meaningfully. Spiritual growth requires that we strip away our defenses, let go of the ego, and open ourselves to the possibility of being hurt. But it is in this act of surrender that we find our true strength. When we are willing to show our vulnerability, we discover a deeper connection with ourselves, with others, and with the world around us. In conclusion, vulnerability is not a weakness, but a powerful and transformative force. When we accept and embrace our vulnerability, we open ourselves to a more authentic life, full of deep and meaningful connections. We discover that we do not have to be perfect to be loved and respected. On the contrary, it is precisely our imperfection, our humanity, that makes us special and unique. So, the next time you feel vulnerable, remember that you are getting in touch with your true strength. Embrace that vulnerability and allow yourself to grow, connect, and live a full and authentic life.